poverty is not always the result of laziness, bad decisions, or lack of faith. The Bible itself recognizes injustice, difficult circumstances, and people who need help. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 23, even describes the poor having productive land whose harvest can be swept away through injustice. Scripture never gives us permission to look down on people who struggle. But the Bible also reveals patterns of wisdom that can change what happens when money enters your hands. These principles cannot guarantee wealth, erase every disadvantage, or control the economy. What they can do is help a person replace financial chaos with order, dependence with greater stability, and short-term survival with long-term thinking. Here are 5 biblical money laws that can help break destructive financial cycles. The first law is to make a plan before you make a purchase. Proverbs chapter 21 verse 5 says that the plans of the diligent lead toward abundance, while haste leads toward poverty. Notice the contrast. The issue is not simply how hard someone works. Scripture connects progress with diligence and planning, while warning against financial decisions made in haste. Many poverty cycles are strengthened by financial life happening only in reaction. The bill arrives, then we figure something out. The emergency happens, then we search for money. The paycheck comes, and spending begins before anything has been assigned a purpose. Biblical wisdom reverses that order. Before the money leaves, decide where it should go. Know what must cover housing, food, transportation, debt, savings, and giving. Even if the income is small, planning creates something poverty constantly tries to steal: control over the next decision. You may not be able to change your income immediately, but you can begin changing the instructions you give that income. The second law is to treat debt as a loss of freedom, not simply a payment. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 7 warns that the borrower becomes servant to the lender. That does not mean every form of borrowing is automatically sinful. It means debt creates an obligation over future income. And that becomes dangerous when yesterday's decisions keep consuming tomorrow's paycheck. A monthly payment may look affordable by itself, but add credit cards, financing, personal loans, car payments, and buy now pay later purchases, and suddenly income that should be building the future is paying for the past. Breaking that cycle may require uncomfortable decisions. Stop adding consumer debt. Attack high-cost balances. Delay purchases that require borrowing. Build even a small emergency cushion so every surprise does not become another loan. Debt can give you something today while quietly claiming part of your tomorrow. If you want more practical biblical wisdom about money, work, stewardship, and legacy, subscribe to this channel. We study Scripture without turning prosperity into a promise or financial struggle into a reason for shame. The third law is to build little by little. Proverbs chapter 13 verse 11 says, "Wealth gained hastily dwindles, but whoever gathers little by little increases it." Scripture is directly challenging the fantasy of instant financial rescue. That matters because desperation makes quick money promises powerful. When someone has struggled for years, slow progress can feel insulting. Saving $50 seems meaningless when the need is $5,000. Learning a skill feels too slow when the bills are due now. Investing consistently can feel boring compared with a promise to double money quickly. But biblical wisdom respects accumulation. One emergency fund deposit, one debt payment, one new skill, one avoided impulse purchase, 1 month of living below your income. None of those decisions looks dramatic. Stack them for years and they can change a family. The cycle of poverty often says, if I cannot change everything today, nothing I do matters. Wisdom says, small progress repeated faithfully becomes something larger. The fourth law is to increase your capacity, not only reduce your expenses. Cutting waste matters, but there is a limit to how much a person can cut. Eventually, financial progress also requires becoming more valuable through useful work, knowledge, skill, reliability, or service. Consider Ruth. She arrived in Bethlehem as a widow with very little security. Ruth, chapter 2, shows her going into the fields to glean grain behind the harvesters. Boaz noticed her reputation, her work, and her loyalty. Ruth did not begin with wealth. She began by faithfully using the opportunity available to her. Her story is not a formula saying hard work guarantees riches. Ruth also benefited from the generosity and protection of Boaz, and the law of Israel deliberately made provision for vulnerable people. That balance matters, personal responsibility matters, and so does a just community. So ask yourself, what ability could increase your earning power over the next 2 years? Could you learn sales, bookkeeping, a trade, technology, management, communication, or another skill people genuinely need? Sometimes the most valuable asset you can build is not sitting in an account. It is the person you are becoming. The fifth law is to stop thinking only about your survival and start thinking about the next generation. Proverbs chapter 13 verse 22 says, "A good person leaves an inheritance to his children's children." That inheritance does not have to begin with millions of dollars. It begins when one generation decides that the financial confusion it received does not have to be passed forward. Maybe your parents could not teach you budgeting because nobody taught them. Maybe debt was normal in your house. Maybe money was never discussed until there was a crisis. Maybe there was nothing left to inherit except financial fear. You can begin changing that. Teach your children what money is for. Show them how saving works. Let them see patience before purchases. Build insurance where appropriate. Prepare basic estate documents. Avoid leaving unnecessary debt. Create assets when you can. Pass down skills, wisdom, discipline, and faith alongside whatever money remains. And biblical legacy is bigger than keeping everything inside your own family. Deuteronomy chapter 15 commands God's people not to harden their hearts toward the poor, but to open their hands and help those in need. The passage recognizes that poverty will continue to exist and places responsibility not only on the struggling person, but also on the surrounding community. That protects us from a dangerous distortion. Biblical financial wisdom is not, become successful and forget everyone who struggled beside you. It is, become a faithful steward. Build stability where you can, and use greater capacity to strengthen others too. So remember the 5 laws. Plan before you spend. Treat destructive debt as surrendered freedom. Build patiently, little by little. Increase your capacity through useful work and skill. And build a legacy that reaches beyond yourself. None of these laws promises an easy life. People can practice wisdom and still face layoffs, injustice, illness, inflation, family emergencies, or economic crisis. But cycles are often broken when someone decides that the pattern will no longer continue unchanged. One person learns what nobody taught the family. One person begins saving. One person stops financing appearances. One person develops a valuable skill. One person teaches the children differently. And eventually, what once looked permanent becomes a chapter instead of an inheritance. Which of these 5 laws does your family need most? Tell me in the comments. Share this video with someone who is trying to build a stronger financial future, and subscribe for more biblical wisdom about money, responsibility, and legacy. You may not be able to rewrite the financial decisions of the generations before you, but with wisdom, discipline, help from others, and faithful stewardship, you can influence what the generations after you receive.